There's this false binary of free will or determinism. And in college, at least, I really felt like I had to choose a side. I started studying neuroscience, and there's this debate between neuroscientists, and a lot of philosophers want to believe in free will, and a lot of neuroscientists don't. But I have gone towards the middle into like compatibilist territory, meaning that they're compatible ideas, they're not mutually exclusive. But I'm still like sort of towards the determinist side of things. However, I obviously talk a lot about free will and choice and autonomy and responsibility, accountability, taking responsibility for the choices you make. And I believe that that's really important.
I think for me, how I often see it is it's like there is some level of free will, I feel like there's some level of choice that I'm able to make, and there's so much beyond that. I was listening to, I think, a podcast episode, and you were talking about, I feel like, being a compatibilist and going more towards determinism with like faith and some of these different things. Can you share what is your like perspective on that?
Yeah, okay. I studied philosophy in college, and that was like one of the main things that really stuck with me. It's a big topic in my book that's on Substack, and this sort of, again, I mean, I say again because you're familiar, but everyone else is not, that I constantly like tearing down binaries, and there's this false binary of free will or determinism, or free will and fate. And I think at one point, in college at least, I really felt like I had to choose a side.
Hmm.
I started studying neuroscience, and there's this debate between neuroscientists and philosophers. A lot of philosophers want to believe in free will, and a lot of neuroscientists don't. That's not like 100% the case on those two in those two camps, but there is this kind of ongoing debate. And so I at first was really like, wow, yeah, I guess we don't really actually have free will. Everything is sort of predetermined, but we have the experience of free will, or the illusion of free will, which is really important for being a person in the world. But, if you stop believing in free will, then like the justice system crumbles. The whole idea that like anyone should be punished for anything crumbles. And I mean, I'm still pretty firmly there, like let's topple the justice system as it is right now. But I have gone towards the middle into like compatibilist territory, meaning that they're compatible ideas, they're not mutually exclusive. But I'm still like sort of towards the determinist side of things. However, I obviously talk a lot about free will and choice and autonomy and responsibility, accountability, taking responsibility for the choices you make. And I believe that that's really important. That's like how we stay in community, and how we stay connected, and how we grow and learn. And so yeah, I've been really circling around lately, like really circling around this idea of like hypocrisy, and how it's sort of I don't know if it's necessary, but it kind of just is, like I think there's a way that a lot of people want to be able to say that's hypocritical, and then like that undermines the whole argument, and it's supposed to end everything there, when really like anyone getting accused of being hypocritical, like it's not effective. I mean, I think we're seeing that with like what's going on in Gaza right now. Like, there's people who are going to justify their hypocrisy in any way, shape, or form, and so an accusation of that doesn't really mean anything. But I've also been just thinking a lot about this idea of like, yeah, that like I don't I believe in free will, and I believe we don't have much of it. And like those are just they just have to coexist.
Yeah. So they are somehow both happening at the same time. And I think for me, how I often see it is it's like there is some level of free will, I feel like there's some level of choice that I'm able to make, and there's so much beyond that. Like even if you took a sort of a an understanding of like karma, right? There's like kind of three different words of what they use for karma. Like one of them is literally just like, hey, you were like born and you didn't choose your parents, you didn't choose all these different things, you didn't choose like all the historical events that led up to this moment in time where you are, and that has huge ramifications for your entire life, and you don't get to choose that or a lot of the things that happen after that. But like there is like a little bit of stuff that you can choose in between to go a different direction, to create a new path, and to jump into it. I even think of like I think it's Marcus Aurelius says this as a quote where it's you'll either be you can either run to fate or be dragged by it. And so there's like a sense of
Mm.
like, well, maybe it's just about my attitude that I feel in the thing that I've been given.
Yeah, I think there's something about I was watching this thing that went viral with Andrew Garfield recently. It was just like a silly, dumb thing, like reality TV show that he was on for a second, and he asks his interviewer if she knows the difference between fate and destiny. Um, and then she like blasts past it, and he never explains it. So but I was like I was like, what is it? And I Googled it, and there's they're related obviously, but like destiny is a sense of purpose, and then your sort of your where free will comes in is like accepting it or denying it. So like working towards it, or resisting it. Um, and I do think that there's like steps along the way on any kind of journey in life that we have a certain amount of choice in. But I do think that we're largely a product of everything that came before, and the people who raised us, and the society we live in, and the opportunities we've been given. And I mean, I even think about like I'm a writer, but I'm a writer because my mom was a magazine editor. My dad has a journalism degree. His mom was a writer. Like I come from a lineage of writers. So that's what I do. I don't know that I would be doing it, and there's no way to know if I would be doing it if I had been, I don't know, like adopted or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you kind of like mentioned a point that a lot of times I get to with a lot of these things. It's like, doesn't matter. Like, doesn't
Yeah.
matter why or if. But yeah, I think what I was going to ask was with free will and determinism, like a lot of the question I think I get to with these things is like, does it matter? Like, is it going to change how you actually like live your life or not when you're thinking about
Yeah.
these, you're asking about these things? Because often I think that you can go really deep into these philosophical rabbit holes and all this stuff, but it's like, well, if it's not going to actually change how you live in some way, then is it practical? Is it useful?
Well, I think for some people it really would change how they live. I don't think it has super changed how I live. Um, I have a a really strong like Jewish community in LA, and I go to Torah study weekly, and one of the guys at Torah study who I've become friendly with, we're like very unlikely friends. He's like, I think he's in his 60s. He like won't say his pronouns when we introduce ourselves. Um, he's a really funny guy, and we've like struck up this unlikely friendship. And he I said something about like the parsha that we were reading one day, and I was like, I would just feel so guilty if oh, I was saying, I feel like this is relevant, that because it was about like who gets punished and who can kill whom if someone kills like your brother, let's say. And I brought up how like I often think about, and like this is like pretty selfish, but I often think about how much it would fuck up my life to accidentally kill someone, or to like accidentally hit a cat, or like I would be so heartbroken and devastated and feel so guilty that I'm and thinking in the context of like our criminal justice system, to punish someone, isn't it punishment enough? Like you have to like live with this horror that you did by accident. And what is real justice there? Like, is it taking someone else's life as well? Anyway, I said this and about feeling guilty, and he was like, how could you feel guilty if you're a determinist? Which also was hilarious because it just meant that he had like remembered that about me, like from our Torah study session. So it was very, very sweet. But anyway, the point being like, well, I experience free will. It isn't, whether or not I believe that we have much of it isn't affecting how I live my life. I still go around trying not to kill people by accident and like and thinking, it wouldn't matter if it was like I don't know. I mean, don't we all feel like regret or like, oh, I would do that differently? And it's like, well, if I were really living in such a way where like my lack of a belief in free will or my belief that we don't have free will, if it were changing how I were living, then I would be able to say like, well, that's what was supposed to happen. And that's just like not what it's like to be a person, I think.
Yeah, no, I resonate with that a lot. I mean, that was why I started a blog that I think I did like 2 blog posts on when I first got out of college. And I wrote this like piece that was essentially I think it was like my closed mind on free will. And it was basically, my argument was like, nobody actually operates as if they don't have free will.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my experiential argument for it, was just like, well, nobody actually operates that way. Nobody actually goes through life as if they are just a cog in the wheel, or fully is like, oh, well, that was supposed to happen. No one is like that detached and emotionless. And like, I think that means something. Maybe not. Maybe we are just all in our own movie, but I feel like the human experience is at my own basis for truth. So, yeah.
Well, I would also flip it and look at it like even someone who doesn't believe in free will wants other people to act as though they have free will.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I don't believe in free will and you keep like bumping into me and I'm like, well, Cameron can't control that, or like that's happening because it's supposed to be happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like that would be absurd. I want you to take responsibility for yourself and what you do, your behavior, your words, even if I don't believe that we have much free will.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree.